Move on to our other top focus of the hour. 800 arrests, 17 countries and a massive global sting operation. European police agency called the Europol had secretly planned a sting to blow to organised international crime. After 3 years of the secret operation, the police from Australia, Europe and the United States have now announced a major success. 17 countries had participated in this international sting operation called Operation Trojan Shield. More than 700 locations were searched and more than 800 people have now been arrested. And more than 8 tons of cocaine has now been recovered. The operation included infiltrating into the encrypted phone network called ANOM, which has been used by criminal gangs recently. Law enforcement agencies from more than 16 countries hacked into and tracked the messages sent over the private ANOM network. In Australia alone, 224 people have been charged as part of this operation.
Are some of the most dangerous criminals to Australia. We allege they are members of outlaw motorcycle gangs, Australian mafia, Asian crime syndicates and serious and organised crime groups. We allege they have been trafficking illicit drugs into Australia at an industrial scale. Sadly, criminal gangs are targeting Australia because it is one of the most profitable countries in the world to sell drugs. And for 3 years, this operation has been covert. Australian law enforcement has been arresting and charging alleged offenders, and we have prevented tons of drugs from coming on shore.
The ANOM cryptophones used by the criminal gangs had no email calling or GPS service on them. They could be used only for sending messages and could be bought only in the black market from other criminals. The ANOM phones grew in popularity as high-profile criminal gangs vouched for their safety, under the impression that the police had no access to their encrypted network. But the agencies have stated that they were monitoring these messages on the ANOM network for several years. Even in Europe, raids were carried out on Monday by the Europol, rounding up criminals of the ANOM network.
I
can confirm there are currently criminal procedural measures in Germany but also in other countries around the world against people who are suspected of involvement in organized crime. These measures are currently ongoing. They are being coordinated by Europol, and I have to ask for your understanding that I can't provide any assessment or comment about the ongoing measures at the moment. You will be informed after those measures have been terminated.
The Europol has described the operations as the most sophisticated ones till date. Last year, the international law enforcement agencies had managed to successfully infiltrate into another secure encrypted mobile network called encrypted. That was used by criminal gangs across Europe. Now, for more on this story, our correspondent Stuart Smith is now joining us live from Brussels. Stuart, thanks so much for joining us on WION at this hour. More than 800 arrests in 17 countries and a massive global sting operation. This is quite unprecedented. Tell us more about the scale of the operation and what has been recovered so far.
Yes, well, Europol says this is what's required in an age of globalisation when criminal networks easily span the world and digital communications allow people to discuss criminal activities across the world. It's this kind of joined-up thinking, this kind of joined-up police action which needs to take place to actually catch these criminals. And that's an example of what we've seen here with a messaging service not just hacked or encrypted, but in the words of the Netherlands police, the Federal Police Service, that they actually set up the network and then went from there. So over 18 months, police across the world, the FBI and Australia leading the investigation, have been monitoring in real time criminals' activities. 12,000 devices in the back pockets of criminals around the world, they then thinking it's secure when the whole time those messages have been accessible to Australia and the FBI to listen in and see exactly what they're doing. And one example given by the US FBI of simply just being able to look at photographs of where drug shipments are being stored, such as in shipments of fruit, these drugs being hidden. And the FBI says in terms of what they have found, we're looking at quantities as large as 6 tons of cocaine, 5 tons of marijuana and 2 tons of methamphetamines, as well as $148 million in currency and cryptocurrency seized.
Right, Stuart. Now, that is indeed a massive operation. Do we have any details about whether this was a planned operation? Because it must have required coordination between the security agencies of different countries.
It did. It was very well planned in terms of making sure that action was taken on the 7th and 8th of June over the past couple of days to make sure that the criminal networks only found out about the breach in what they thought were the encrypted messaging services all at the same time. And so that's what allowed these law enforcement agencies to create one big hit against the criminal networks all in one go, so they weren't tipped off beforehand, potentially destroying evidence. Having said that, they were saying there are 27 million messages recorded, so a lot of the evidence is plain for all to see in terms of being able to take these cases to court. But certainly for arresting fugitives, this has been important to join up when exactly the arrests are taking place. And for example, even small countries like Sweden with around 10 million people, they searched the houses of 100 people and recovered tens of handguns, potentially to be used in crimes as serious as murder.
Right, Stuart. Thank you so much for all those inputs, and thank you for joining us on WION.